Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talks in Chinese Humanities today. My name is Minerva Inwald, and I'm Judith Nielsen Postdoctoral Fellow in Contemporary Art at the University of New South Wales. Before we get started today, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm on Bidjigal land and pay my respects to elders past and present. The Talks in Chinese Humanities series is co-presented by the Australian Society for Asian Humanities, the China Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, and the Discipline of Chinese Studies at the University of Sydney, as well as the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture at the University of New South Wales. I'm now going to hand over to Associate Professor Stenberg from the University of Sydney to introduce our speaker for today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Inwald. It's a real pleasure today to introduce one of our own. Xiaoliang Zhao has served as a casual academic at the University of Sydney since 2018. She is also a test exemplar for the Community Language Teachers Test and Language Proficiency Test at the Sydney Institute for Community Languages Education. Her research interests span contact-induced language change, sociolinguistics, and the development of minority languages in China. Recently awarded her PhD from the University of Sydney, her doctoral thesis explores language evolution resulting from external influences within the Chinese Korean community since 1948, revealing a dual developmental trajectory within this community. Fieldwork for her research was conducted in the Yǒnbyǒn Korean Autonomous Prefecture of China in 2018, and her language data is accessible on GitHub. Dr. Zhao will speak first. There is a Q&A function on your screen, so if you have any questions while she's speaking, you can put them in there, and at the end of the session, there will be time for Q&A. The whole session will be about an hour in time. So without any further ado, I will pass on to Dr. Zhao for her presentation. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Minerva. Welcome, everyone. My name is Xiaoliang Zhao. Today, I'm going to talk about the Korean language as a heritage language developed in China since 1948. Why 1948 is chosen as a starting point? We leave the question mark here, and we'll find the answer very soon. Korean, as one of the officially described 55 Chinese ethnic minorities, are widely distributed in northeast China. And in particular, the Jilin province, as we can see on the slide, is home to over 1 million Chinese ethnic Koreans, also known as Chosunjok or Chaoxianzu, with nearly 800,000 residing in Yǒnbyǒn Korean Autonomous Prefecture, or YKAP, as of 2012. Making up about 35% of the regional population. In 1951, the Minister of Education, Ma Xulun, positively assessed the Korean language as a model among China's ethnic minorities. The sentiment was later affirmed by official party publicity and many media reports. While the Chinese government considers the Yǒnbyǒn Korean community as a model of coexistence and acknowledges their successful bilingual education, the development of the Korean language in Yǒnbyǒn has been complex. The Korean language in China distinguishes itself from many other languages spoken by indigenous ethnic groups because it was formed through historic immigration waves. So first of all, let's have a look at the immigration waves in history. During the 17th century, the Jurchen clans, later known as the Manchus, founded the Qing dynasty in China, designated the northeast frontier land, as we can see on the map, which includes the present-day Yǒnbyǒn area as a sacred region, the sacred region where public activities were strictly prohibited. As a result, this area became depopulated for about 2 centuries. But in fact, there was like a lot of settlers around this area. We will talk later. There was an agreement known as Jiangdu Huimeng, signed in 1627 between the Jurchen clans and Joseon Kingdom, that is the last dynasty in Korea. One aim of the agreement was to prohibit immigration along the border rivers, Tumen and Yalu. If we can see on the map, that's the two rivers along the borderline. However, in reality, Korean settlers continued to cross the two rivers for activities such as ginseng and traditional medicine collection, hunting and timber felling, those kind of activities. So by the data, researcher like Kim argues that by 1816, more than 81,000 residents were recorded in the area that the Qing dynasty designated as a sacred region. During the decade between 1860 and 1870, the influx of Korean immigrants largely increased, triggered by 3 severe famines in northern region of Korea. So if we look at the history during that decade, that led people to flee in search of food and sustenance. In fact, after 1860, the Qing court expedited the opening of the previously forbidden northeast area due to 2 reasons. First, the number of Korean immigrants had visibly increased already. For example, by the 1880s, the Korean population had become predominant in the northeastern borderland of Qing dynasty, comprising over 70% of the population along the Tumen and the Yalu, the 2 rivers. Second, which is more important perhaps, Russia's annexation of the neighboring territory of the present-day YKAP from Qing had turned this region into China's frontier, attracting significant attention from both Russia and Japan. In 1881, the forbidden policy for the Northeast region was finally abolished, and the nationality was granted to the Korean immigrants who applied. Though at the beginning, the number of applicants was relatively small. In the next few years, the Qing court introduced new policies to encourage settlers in this area. Well, that's the short history. But shortly after, the Qing dynasty was overthrown, and the entire northeast region, along with its diverse ethnic residents, came under the rule of warlord factions, including the most influential Feng clique, the Feng Xi Junfa. So by 1931, changed again the situation. Japan had gained actual control over northeast China, leading to the establishment of Manchukuo, Manchukuo, between 1932 and 1945. So Manchukuo as a puppet state under Japanese influence. The development of railways between Manchukuo and Korea, coupled with immigration policies implemented by the Japanese colonial government, resulted hundreds of thousands of immigrants moving from Korea to Manchukuo. So these are the 2 railways we can see downside the Korea territory. That's the major railway there during that period. And the Korean immigration in Manchuria between 1936 and 1942 roared from 600,000 to 1.5 million. By 1944, 1 year before Japan's surrender during World War II, the number of Korean immigrants in northeast China had reached 1.66 million. So that was one period. Another period, so following the period we just talked, during the Chinese Second Civil War between 1945 and 1949, the situation in northeast China remained highly unstable due to the fluctuating control of Manchuria between the rival parties, CCP Chinese Communist Party, and the KMT, Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party of China. In Eastern Manchuria, known as Yǒnbyǒn or YKAP, as we mentioned, it was occupied by Soviet troops 4 days after Japan's unconditional surrender in 1945, leading to the establishment of the temporary government of Kando or Jiandao. Well, that's also still a troublesome area, I suppose, today. And later, the Yǒnbyǒn Democratic League. Then the Yǒnbyǒn Prefectural Party Committee of the CCP took charge and established the local government. However, the situation changed again when the Kuomintang arrived in the area. In 1947, the Kuomintang submitted to CCP power. Yǒnbyǒn subsequently became a firmly communist area with the CCP maintaining control and influence. Now, because we've already until the time point 1947, so let's answer the question in the beginning. This research chooses 1948 as a starting point to look at language change in the Korean community of China, as this period marked the notable influence of modern standard Chinese on the Korean language. Yǒnbyǒn Korean as a recipient language has undergone significant influence from modern standard Chinese, particularly in its lexicon, semantics, like the meaning, and the structure. However, it is essential to note that this contact-induced change is largely are not fixed, actually, during language's development. The direction of language change is largely influenced by social settings. Socio-political contexts are key drivers of the language change, as they brought about different patterns of contact and language choices within the minority group. The dominance of modern Sino-Korean words, or we can say Chinese character words, or Sino-Korean words, along with semantic and structural influences from Mandarin Chinese, indicate an initial convergence towards Chinese language. And today, we will focus on the part of lexical change. So between the 1950s and the 1970s, the development of minority Korean language faced challenges due to the socio-political climate. During the 1950s, the intensive lexical borrowing of Chinese words by the Korean community became a subject of interest for researchers, journalists, and local intellectuals in YKAP. The topic of standardization of the heritage Korean language emerged. In 1957, Yǒnbyǒn Daily, or Yǒnbyǒn Ribao, shown here on the slide. Actually, this is the initial issue of the Yǒnbyǒn Daily on the 1st of April in 1948. Yǒnbyǒn Daily has been considered as the most influential local newspaper since its establishment. So in the 1957 edition, a special column was dedicated to talking about the norm and standardization of the Korean language developed in China. Among these discussions, the phenomenon of adopting a large number of Chinese words was brought to light. But exactly from this year, this discussion faced a significant setback due to escalating social disturbances in the country. As we can see the historical events here, such as the anti-rightist campaign, 反右运动, the Great Leap Forward, 大跃进, the period of People's Commune, 人民公社, and the Cultural Revolution movement, 文化大革命. Further diverted the focus from the development of the minority Korean language. Instead, the emphasis was placed on promoting monolingualism under the collectivist and Chinese socialist values. So as we can see from the table, between 1948 and 1975, the average of Chinese words in the articles published in Yǒnbyǒn Daily is between 82% and 93%. This means that the most vocabulary you can read in this period on Yǒnbyǒn Daily are Chinese words or Chinese character words, but written in Korean written system like Hangul. And let's look at some examples. So this is an example extracted from Yǒnbyǒn Daily in 1948. It clearly showed the predominant status of the Sino-Korean words. All the Sino-Korean words are highlighted here on the left, and the right side is the translation. And this is a replacement of the Sino-Korean words from Hangul, the Korean written system, to Chinese characters like this. And we can see over 82% of the vocabulary in this text are Chinese words. And let's see one more example. That's the extraction from Yǒnbyǒn Daily in 1969. Showed the similar situation. The Sino-Korean words are highlighted again, more than 85% are Chinese character words or Sino-Korean words here. And this is the English translation. So since the late 1970s, following the decline of leftist ideology within the CCP, the constraints on the Korean language have been eased, granting the community more liberty to foster their own language. There has been a renewed recognition of the importance of promoting the Korean language in the YKAP. This shift is reflected through various actions supported by national policies and local communities at that time. Since the late 1970s, following the decline, around 1977 or 1978, the cooperation group of Korean language, this is an organization, actually a government-supported organization or government-funded organization, created the initial version of the Korean language specifications, or Chosunmal Kyubomjip in Korean. Since that time, this official group has been responsible for regularly assessing and guiding development of the heritage Korean language. Through the official recognition of the Korean language in China, efforts have been made to maintain and adjust the Korean language used in Yǒnbyǒn and the northeast region of China. As we can see from the photo on the left, it is a book launch ceremony of the Korean language specifications in 2016. This figure provides a visual representation of the declining use of Sino-Korean words since the late 1970s. As we can see here, from 1948 to 1975, the percentage of Sino-Korean words is higher than 80%. And then this figure had a visible decline, dropping to 74% in 1979 and further to 72% in 1989. This trend continued as a decrease trend to 67% in 1999, and then around 70% in 2019. So that's the decline trend, very obviously. Maybe we are wondering what kind of vocabulary replaces the lost Sino-Korean words. So now let's have a look at the other side of the story. A big change of Yǒnbyǒn Korean in recent years is the popular use of English or Anglo-Korean words. And why is this happening? Let's start from beginning. Following the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the frequency of contact between Yǒnbyǒn and the Korean Peninsula decreased compared to previous levels. From 1949 to 1980s, linguistic communications were primarily between Yǒnbyǒn and North Korea, as there were no diplomatic relations with South Korea, like between Beijing and Seoul. Ever since China established official diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1992, there has been a visible impact on the Yǒnbyǒn Korean language. It was because maybe the growing economic and sociocultural influence of South Korea. This change had a notable impact on the Yǒnbyǒn Korean language, bringing new vocabulary and linguistic influences, etc. Since the 1990s, the Yǒnbyǒn Korean community has experienced an influx of South Korean vocabulary with a particular emphasis on English loanwords. Wu et al. In 2020 argues that this trend has triggered a visible surge in neoliberal compatriotic citizenship within the ethnic Korean community. And this trend, the linguistic trend, has been propelled by the emergence of a more interconnected and globalized society, fostering increased integrations between the Yǒnbyǒn Korean community and South Korea and the rest of the world. The rapid economic growth, the market-driven globalization in South Korea have been instrumental in facilitating this linguistic exchange. And the global spread of Korean wave, or Hallyu in Korean, since the beginning of this century, as we can see sometimes here, the K-pop is also popularized, has brought forth new cultural values and language items, particularly the Seoul-style English borrowings, to the Yǒnbyǒn Korean. This figure shows that the number of English borrowings in 1999 is much higher than in 1970s and 1989. While in fact, there were nearly no English borrowings in the newspaper between 1948 and the 1970s. But there were English words or English borrowings in Korean newspaper published in this region, in Yǒnbyǒn, around the 1930s or before 1945. So that's another story. We may or may not talk it today, depends on the time. And when comparing the English increase in 1999 to that in 2019, the latter shows a real surge, as we can see here. So if we look at a newspaper, especially the online version, Yǒnbyǒn Daily or Killing News, those kind of the newspaper published in YKAP, we will find a lot of English loan words. And let's see, these are some English loanwords extracted from the Yǒnbyǒn Daily in 2019. Yet, this is not the whole map of the Korean language developed in China. The language change of Yǒnbyǒn Korean, shaped by context and influenced by social contexts, it possesses a feature or characteristic. It can potentially be redirected and contested by socio-political, sociocultural, and other societal factors. Firstly, the socio-political landscape plays the key role, exerting top-down influence stemming from modern Chinese language. The focus on promoting standard Mandarin or Putonghua and standardizing the Chinese writing system as part of China's reform and development has presented challenges for the maintenance and development of the heritage Korean language. The efforts to advance Putonghua proficiency, especially in rural areas, and the nationwide promotion of Mandarin have the potential to overshadow minority languages like Korean. One example is the 13th Five-Year Development Plan, 5年计划, 第13个5年计划 of national language words, implemented in 2016, with its emphasis on strengthening Putonghua education in all schools, and promoting its use across country, could impact the use and preservation of minority languages like the Yǒnbyǒn Korean. So compared, if we closely examine the use of Sino-Korean, the Chinese words, Anglo-Korean, the English borrowings or English words, and the native Korean words across different domains, we will notice visible differences. The Chinese borrowings are most popular in political contexts, while English loanwords are predominantly used in such as sports, fashion, food, travel, those kind of recreational areas. And if you still remember the cooperation group of Korean language, that one we just mentioned, the government supported organization and their Korean language specifications aimed to assess and guide the heritage Korean language. It seems they didn't support borrowing English words at all, especially the widespread use of English loanwords was not encouraged. Therefore, on one hand, the socio-political landscape plays a key role, exerting top-down influence stemming from Chinese language. On the other hand, sociocultural and economic factors, as experienced in the daily lives of ordinary Korean speakers, act as the bottom-up force, drawing influence from South Korea and the global trend. This figure shows a visible trend in Yǒnbyǒn Korean language from 2009 to 2019. English borrowings actually has experienced growth across almost all major news divisions. At the same time, the use of Sino-Korean words or Chinese words has decreased in most categories, such as literature, sports, economics, etc. Yet increased in civil issues like the social news or news happening every day, those kind of news. If you pick up a Yǒnbyǒn Daily, you will find the difference. And in fact, the younger generations of Yǒnbyǒn Korean speakers nowadays displays a high level of bilingualism and more proficiency Mandarin Chinese. That's also another problem. Moreover, the proportion of ethnic Korean in YKAP or Yǒnbyǒn has decreased since 1949. This is a figure about the change of Korean population ratio in YKAP between 1949 and 2020. I searched all the data from various sources and found it's declined and keep declining actually. So as shown by the figure, the Korean population in the region in 1949 counted for over 33%. And this number declined to 40% by 1980. Well, data from the 7th National Population Census of China in 2020 reveals that the Korean population in YKAP is less than 600,000, constituting about 30% of the total population of this region. So altogether, in this context, the maintenance and development of the Korean language in the YKAP face significant challenges as they navigate between the promotion of the national language and the preservation of their own linguistic heritage. Balancing these priorities while respecting the rights and the cultural identities of minority communities remains an ongoing task. I think I will stop here perhaps, and we'll leave some time for the Q&A session.